Hey guys, thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for joining and all that jazz. I just want to see something here. So I believe that I am live, but I don't know what the public view is. So I just want to check something. Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, so we have action. Cool. So hello, welcome. Thank you for coming back. We're going to be doing a couple of kind of your charts this evening. Basically the idea, and I know that it's maybe boring for some of you guys, but the idea is really to hammer home this concept of like putting together a strategy and using multiple different inputs in order to generate signals for you to whether you want to buy or sell. So tonight may be boring for some. I don't know. I hope not. But to some extent, it should be relatively interesting as well, because we're going to be looking at a number of stocks. Some of the stocks are Aspen, Naspers, Anglo American, Platinum, Impala, Kumba, BBC, Shoprite, MTN, Glencore, PSG, Hilleman, Jubilee, Mr. Price, and British American Tobacco. It's quite a few. I don't know if we're going to get through to that. The first part of what I want to do this evening is going to center around kind of putting together a strategy. So I'm literally going to take you through the whole process here. So let's go on the center screen. I've got Excel open here. What we want is we want to create like a model that gives us buying and selling signals. So if we remember from last week, we spoke about building a strategy and putting things together, right? So step one is to identify the trend. Step two is to identify where you put your stop loss and apply a risk management technique. Step three would be then your reasons to enter. Step four, reasons to exit. Step five, the warning signs why you may or may not get in and out of or get out of a trade sooner. So basically, just keeping that up there in the corner, you might have to ignore the little red numbers here. Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to build a bit of a model this evening to give us like an indication as to, well, at least how my thinking works. So I'm just going to start right over here, and we're going to say trend. Okay. So there are basically a couple of things that we want to do here. If the trend is up, down, or flat, right? We're going to be building like a scoring system, basically. If the trend is up, we're going to score it a 1. So let's say trend up equals 1, flat equals 0, and down equals minus 1, right? So is the trend up, down, or flat? I'll zoom in here a bit for you so you can see what is cooking. Right? Are we trading the primary, secondary, or tertiary trend? That is technically not really what we're going to be looking at, but that is definitely something that we're going to look at, right? So phase of the trend. We want to know which phase of the trend is we're in. Do we have a Dow theory trend? Obviously, that's how we're going to determine the trend. So I guess that is part of the question that we ask. Might not need to include that. And then does OBV confirm our trend, right? So what we're going to do, I'm going to move that over here. And I'm going to say we want to ID we want to ID our phase, and we want to ID our Dow theory. All right. And this is our scoring box. Okay, cool. Then step 2 is going to be our stop loss type thing. Okay, so we are going to use which risk management tool we're going to use? Riskman method. right? And then which rule, being it the 2% rule or the like exposure rule or whatever the case is, right? So this technically does not form part of our scoring model. So we're going to put it over here for now because it isn't as important. What we need is reasons to enter, right? So entry. Here we have basically what we want to see is a stochastic buy, or let's just call it a stochastic signal. We want to see a MACD signal, not single. We want to see RSI signal. We want to see a okay, OBV forms part of the trend, and we want to see candles, but that's not really so important. That's more going to be as part of our nice to haves. So I suppose we can exclude that. And again, what we're going to have here is a entry signals is going to score us a buy, is going to be a 1, no signal is going to be a 0, and a sell is going to be a -1. Alright, so basically what we want to do here is we want to build like a way of identifying whether or not we're going to get into particular trades, right? Then we have the nice to haves. And here we have candles, and we have support, resistance. Move that up. We have oh wait, here we want divergence. So I'm going to say divergence of the stochastic, divergence of the MACD, divergence of the RSI. Okay. Then we need a moving average crossover, MA cross. MA cross here is going to call, I'm just going to do that, MA cross, bullish, MAs is going to be 1, bearish, MAs is going to be -1. Okay, I'm just going to check Discord for questions, none so far. Okay, cool. So basically what we're doing is we're building like a little bit of a like a scoring system, right? MA cross, and we basically want to look for let's say, how many things do we have here? We've got 7 here, right? So we want to score a 4 or better before we can take a trade. Okay, so our entry criteria here is it must be 4 or better score before we can take a trade, and our trend here has to be 2 to trade. Okay, or it could be -2, right? So it could be positive, negative, whichever it is, as long as it's a score of 2 or bigger, -2 or bigger, 4 or bigger, -4 or bigger. Then we have a situation where we can potentially take our trade. Hello, what up peeps? Okay, cool. So let's start looking at some charts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put where's our spreadsheet? But I'm going to put our spreadsheet on the other screen so that we can keep making reference to it from time to time. And then on this side, I'm going to put that center screen. Pow. Right. So Bitcoin was the first question that we got from somebody on Twitter. So what we're going to do, basically, is first things first. close that, is look at the trend. Trend is very obviously down over this time frame that we're looking at. Over this time frame, it's even worse. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically ignore this sort of peak and only look at our chart from sort of April onwards, and even then it's a bit of a downtrend. So the trend is very obviously down. So I mean, for now you wouldn't be looking for longs. Now this is difficult for me because I am fundamentally very bullish on Bitcoin, but I do have a, actually, you know what, I'll take you through this. So I've got a theory, if you will. So this is the Bitcoin chart from since inception, and for the sake of ease we'll put it on a logarithmic scale, right? So it starts obviously at worthless and works its way up, and as time goes by, it sort of has this huge rally. But just look at the difference between a logarithmic scale and a non-logarithmic scale on that, right? So in percentage terms, from where it started at, you know, 579 to 3,900 is still a colossal sized move. And going back even further, I mean, this thing comes from basically, man, I hate it when it does that, auto. This thing basically comes from zero, right? So over time, I mean, it starts here at zero and it goes up there, up to 4,000. So there's a little blip to 20,000. From there, you know, it's still a colossal move. But basically what happens here is if we can see a couple of things. We can see this first move here, it sort of came about in 2009, 2010, around there. No real data on it till about 2012. There has been historic sort of movements and peaks and stuff on that in the past already. So we can look at Bitcoin wisdom. My apologies. To maybe get a feel for slightly longer dated data, and do they even have longer dated data? They should. Daily, 1 week. All right, so the very first peak and trough situation was back here in 2014, right? Put a crosshair on. So in 2014 was our first kind of peak, and if we look, it was in December 2014 or 2013 that the previous you know, exponential rally had taken place, coming from $7 and rallying all the way. And I mean, this is 2013, essentially starting the year at what, $13, and then ending and then topping out at the high of the year at $1,163, and then it proceeded to basically come all the way back down to $150. So that is about an 80% correction, if my maths, you know, isn't too completely off, right? And then we have this sideways consolidation period from 2015. So you can see it sort of bottoms out right coming into 2015. So from 2013 it peaks, 2015 it comes down. It seems to bottom out right at the onset in January of 2015. And then we have basically a year of it recovering, or slowly going nowhere, basically making it back to a previous resist or support level. And then in 2016 we have what looks like a break. It now, here in the beginning of 2017, starts to take out the highs, and then boom, right? There's just this huge move all the way up to 20,000 or 19,666. And here we have once again a very similar looking chart where we see a 80% correction, which might not have bottomed out as yet. Alright, so if this pattern basically repeats itself, then oh well, if this pattern repeats itself, it should have bottomed out here around January, right? And if we look, it was kind of December-ish where so far we have the low. So from that perspective, and that is down around 80% from the high. So, you know, I think that this thing, if you are patient, is probably it's probably a screaming buy, to tell you the truth. But none of that is using the tool set that we have learned. So we're going to do that. First, we're going to identify the trend. We're going to use a logarithmic chart because, let's face it, this thing is ultra volatile and we need something to smooth it out. We've had a hell of a drop here. There is a significant resistance, that is a confirmed resistance level. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow our step program here. So if you'll remember, step one, we are going to identify the trend. So the trend here on Bitcoin is very obviously down. Step two, all right, I'm just checking if there's any questions, but there aren't. All right, step two, we are going to look for where we are going to put our stop losses. But let's confirm our trend. What we want to do is we want to add an unbalanced volume, OBV, so that we can see whether or not our trend is confirmed or not. In this downtrend, our OBV is trending down as well. So in accordance to our little strategy flowchart, what we're going to say is that we have a downtrend, so we give that a -1. I'm looking at the wrong. I'm just going to minimize that. Let's look at that. So we're going to give that a -1. OBV confirmation, -1, because the OBV is trending down with price. Okay, so that is a confirmed downtrend. I don't know if it gets you know, much more obvious than what this chart looks like. Okay, so our trend here, I'm going to say equals sum those two is -2. So we have a downtrend. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Equals sum, boom, 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 boom. And we're literally going to apply all of these indicators to it now to see if we can find something. We're going to look at a stochastic. And we're going to put a normal one on. I'm going to move that away and make that bigger, make that bigger. It's maybe too big. Okay, so let's have a look at what are we looking for. We are looking for an active buy signal on stochastic. If there is no signal, we score it a 0, right? So is there an active buy signal? Sorry, I'm gonna just move this thing here because I want to be able to see if you guys have questions. It is important for me to know if you guys have questions. So far it seems that there are none. Live stream chat, okay, cool. All right, so what we're looking for basically is any kind of divergence or a stochastic buy signal at this point. Okay, so a stochastic buy signal, no, we don't. We actually have a bearish crossover here. What looks like a bearish crossover of the stochastic in this area right here. I'll zoom in a little bit so we can see that is in fact a bearish crossover over standard 1433 stochastic. So that gets a -1. Makes sense because our trend is down, right? While we've got the stochastic open, we may as well look for divergence. We have here, let's use those tops. So we have from there to there, that looks like a flat level to me, right? And from here to here, we have, let's see if that is a type of divergence. looking once again at our sort of divergence cheat sheet here, we have rising prices on the oscillator, but no falling prices on this. I suppose we could really scrutinize this here and say that if we look at this very, very technically, if we use the closing of that candle and the opening of that candle is at the same level, these are lower, boom, right? While these tops on the stochastic are very obviously higher. I'm going to make this slightly thicker, and I'm going to make it, I don't know, pink, not pink. I'm tired of pink. Always use pink. Let's make it that purple. There you go. And this one we're going to make slightly bigger as well. So this actually has a downward slope, like a very, 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 very slightly one, and this has a very obvious upward slope. And if we remember our little cheat sheet here, upward sloping indicator, downward sloping price chart is bearish, right? So we give our stochastic divergence a -1 because we have bearish divergence. Okay. Next, we need a MACD signal. So we're going to remove a Zim MACD. Oh, we're going to remove the MACD. All right. And we're going to, the stochastic, and we're going to add a MACD. And we're going to 12.26.9. That is the standard one. Let's just make it a bit easier to see. Green is always good. Yes, that's a bright green. I want a darker green. I suppose it doesn't really matter what color green I take, so let's just take the easiest one to see. Alright, so let's have a look again. So this is the period we're looking at. Do we have what does this look like? That would be a bearish cross followed by a bullish cross followed by a bearish cross that hasn't bullish crossed again yet, so we are still under a sell signal on MACD, right? Plus we're above the sort of middle line or central line, and we can see that if it crosses up and above here, that was actually quite a nice little sell signal there. So for now, I would say that we are under the guise of a sell signal on our MACD. MACD -1. Is there any divergence on our MACD? Let's have a look. We have a low and a low. We have higher highs and lower highs. If we remember, that is ever so slightly lower. That is very obviously higher highs there. That's the only one that stands out for me. So once again, we have bearish divergence on our MACD. So we have a -1. Already we got a score of -4 on our indicator list, right? Okay, so moving on to the next one. We are moving on to an RSI. RSI, a relative strength index. 14 periods, yes indeed, that is what we want. We want to remove that, and we want to make it nice and thick so we can see it. Sorry, I just removed those backgrounds because I don't like them. They're not very cool for me. Alright, so looking at the RSI, we have a sort of overbought situation that came back down, and it has come down to test and bounce off of the 50 line. So if we remember, if we find support on the 50 line, then we say that the stock is in an uptrend, or we found that usually the stock is in an uptrend. Okay, so if this does appear to be support, then we could say that the stock, or in this case Bitcoin, might want to trend higher, correct? Plus we don't have a like an active signal here. Like there's no actual signal. I just want to check something. Okay, yeah, never mind. So so there's no actual signal on the RSI. Plus, it is an above 50 territory. So the fact that it has, and let's just see if it respects this relationship with 50 historically. I mean, here it was kind of finding resistance at the 50 and coming down, finding resistance, coming down, while we were trending down. Here, okay, there were some overbought situations, bounced up, but we had bouncing above 50 while it was trending up, and then since then it's kind of been every now and then breaking through, but mostly finding resistance at the 50 level. And that seems to have changed polarity now. So for now, I'm not going to say that we have a sell signal. Remember, what we're trading on this thing here is break of support and resistance. We're trading this RSI like it is a stock. So it can either come down from 70 down underneath, you know, from above 70 down through 70 as a potential sell signal, or it can do like a break and retest and, you know, break again. That could be a potential signal, like for example here, breaks up through, doesn't make it, tests it, comes down, right? Or here, break, retest, come down. So those types of triggers are the things that we're looking for here, and for this I actually see none. So I'm going to give it a big fat 0 on our scoring sheet here. Then RSI divergence. Do we have any divergence on our RSI? We have a low around about there, another low there, those are lower. Once again, we have that negative bearish divergence because we have these highs that are higher up, and these are very, very, very slightly, I'm talking fractionally, negative. You know, this is where you've got to use a bit of discretion, because I could actually also say that this that the difference between this level is so slight that you might not even want to consider it. I'm just going to do that. So if we're using this as the high, the reason I'm not using this high, right, just so you know, is because there's no corresponding high here. So if I want to measure from peak to peak, I need to have corresponding highs and corresponding lows. So this, to me, for the purposes of measuring divergence at least, doesn't count as, it's just not, I can't include it because there's no high for me to measure here. I suppose you could use this high, right? But then you have that high, high, lower highs, and that is bearish, right? And then this high, it's bearish again. Now the question is here, do you use, let's actually just see, do you even use this level as